Hi, Valerie Dawn here. Today I'm excited to show you this gorgeous Scrappy Hunter Star quilt. It's called Terra Nova, and its rich, textured palette creates a quilt that's both bold and soothing with radiant stars that sparkle across the design. Terra Nova puts a fresh, scrappy twist on the timeless appeal of Hunter Star. It's easy to make, but looks difficult, and I'll show you the clever, step-by-step process that makes it all come together. I have this great stash of Stonehenge. It's by Northcott. I just love these fabrics, and a lot of them I've had for years. So it's great when you get a quilt like this that you can dig into your stash and use some of it up. And I have found these 4 candidates for the background. Now I'm using the first 3. This one I'm going to reject, although it's very pretty. There's too much color, it's going to distract. I found this collection for the stars, and I just love each one of these. But this is my reject pile, and I'll tell you why. These are more saturated in color than these ones. I'm choosing these fabrics by color and value. The colors vary quite a bit, creating the earthy look I'm after, but the fabrics stay within a fairly narrow range of light and dark values. Hunter Star blocks look complicated at first, but it's built from just a few simple units. I've created a simple process that's going to help us keep everything straight so we don't accidentally reverse the pieces or spend time reaching for the seam ripper. Don't worry about memorizing any of this. We'll use layout templates throughout the process so the pieces stay in the correct orientation. This is Unit A, these 4 half square triangles. We're going to make those first. This is Unit B, another set of 4 half square triangles. They're a mirror image of each other. Then we piece it all together. Once we get all of those patches assembled, this is where the fun happens. We put together the Hunter Star motif, and that's 4 of these units. This process will help us assemble the blocks in the correct sequence and orientation every time, so you can focus on sewing instead of figuring out the layout. We're going to make the half square triangle templates that'll give us a batch of 18 perfectly sized and shaped half square triangles. The first thing we need to do is select the 2 colors of the half square triangle. And then I cut a piece of each measured exactly 10 inches by 10 inches. That's my white background, or my light gray background. I start with a 1/4 inch line right here, and that's going to get trimmed off after I'm done sewing. And I like to use a nice sharp pencil. This is a mechanical pencil. It gives me a nice sharp line. And then I measure over 3 1/8 inches exactly, and I will have 3 sections. The straighter you draw the lines, the more accurate your half square triangles will be. And then I've got another bit on the end, and remember that had my selvage, so it's a little wider. Rotate it and do the same thing. These are the cutting lines. And the next thing we do is draw the diagonals. These are our guidelines for our stitching, and we'll just go down each one of these. Bring your colored fabric back, line them up. So I've got 2 layers of fabric placed right sides together. I like to pin each row to hold the whole sandwich together. These are all cutting lines. We're going to take it to the sewing machine and stitch 1/4 inch on each side of these cutting lines. But hop over those little points because they're part of the other half square triangle. So each one of these becomes a half square triangle once we cut this template apart. I have a 1/4 inch foot on here, and we just start stitching. I'm using a fairly small stitch. It's about 2 1/2. That's why I like the sharp pencil line, because it gives me very accurate guideline. And then just turn the whole piece around. And I'm going to put my needle down on this line because I don't want to stitch over that corner, and stitch on this side. And I'm done. That was very quick to do. Bring it back to the board. If it gets a little bit skewed from the stitching, tug it back into shape so it's perfectly square. This is the fun part where we get to cut them apart. What I like to do is just spread out these old threads. They'll be all cut off. This is the back side. We can see our stitching lines. And then just place the ruler. You need a nice sharp blade for this. And then we just start cutting these lines. And you can use that edge for your 3 1/8 inches. We do the same in this direction. Now I'm going to stack these. Make sure you get all the lines straightened out. And that's going to give me this perfect 2 3/4 inch half square triangle. Press toward the colored fabric. Trim out the dog ears. This is perfect 2 3/4 inch half square triangle. So this is how you sew, cut, no trimming, and you're done. Once you have these all cut apart, all we need to do is press them open. And be careful that you don't stretch it this way because that is on the bias. So it's very satisfying, don't you think? And if you'll see, I've got lots of scrappy colors. Some are darker and some are a bit lighter. There's a couple here that are a bit more saturated that are going to pop. I'm going to use those ones more sparingly. I also have 36 5-inch square in the scrappy colors and 36 5-inch square in my light gray backgrounds. Let's get started on making these blocks. I have this layout that is going to help us put this Unit A patches together really easy so that we don't have to stop and think. Sewing sequence and the pressing directions are right on here. So I'm just going to start laying these out so that they're nice and scrappy. Try and match up the values. So it's kind of a controlled scrappy. Now this is a bright blue and I'm not going to use a whole lot of those, but I've got too many blues together right now. So I'm going to take one of these nice brown. I'm going to stack these so that I can just start sewing and chain piecing. I like to set this right beside my sewing machine. I suggest sewing a few of them and then press and measure and make sure you have an accurate 1/4 inch because these work out much better if your 1/4 inch is as close as you can get it. And then just work through the stack, keeping them lined up just exactly like the pattern. You can piece as many of these at the same time as you want. I like to make one patch and then test it out, make sure I get the measurements right, so that if I do make a little mistake, I don't repeat it. I can correct it before I've got them all done. Okay, I've got all of those stitched. Now I'm going to work on the bottom row, and I know I've got them lined up with my template, and then I just lay them face together and chain piece. And once I've got all my patches stitched, I'm just going to lay them up to the template, and this is my 4 bottom row. I'm going to use this just to guide my pressing. I'm going to press it toward this patch. Now, the pressing direction, now I fussed with this pattern several days to get the seams pressed correctly so that when you assemble the whole quilt top and you start rotating the patches, they all lock together nice and neat. And that's going to help with avoiding bulky seams, and it's going to help line up those seams so that you get nice crisp points. I've got these lined up with my template again, and all I need to do is start flipping them over and stitching them together, and get a nice scrappy mix of colors going. It's okay if you get the same two colors together in the same patch. Once you get that whole quilt top together, it's not going to be obvious, so long as everything else is really nicely distributed across the quilt top. I used to watch my mom stitch stuff like this together, chain piecing. Line it up with our diagram and press the whole piece toward the top. And that gives me my 4 Unit A. We need 36 in total for the whole quilt top. I'm just doing a few at a time. Let's move on to Unit B. Now let's just look at these side by side. Unit A, the diagonals slant to the left. Unit B, the diagonals slant to the right. And these are mirror image. Everything we just did for Unit A, we're going to do for Unit B. At this point, you're starting to see the process. Once you've made a few units, just repeat the steps. I'll start making the rest of my Unit B patches, and then we can move on to the fun part where the hunter star block comes together. Now this is the really fun part. I have 4 Unit A, I have 4 Unit B. These ones slant to the left, that's the Unit A. The Unit B slant to the right. I have another layout template for putting the whole hunter star block together. Unit A goes here, and then we add our gray patch. I'll just stack all 4 of them up there because I'm going to chain piece these. Unit B goes in the bottom right corner, but you have to rotate it. See, make sure you line it up the same as the diagram. So it doesn't go upright like that, it goes like that. And then our colored patches go right here. When you look at this, you see it forms diagonal lines in the same direction. So if you've got it lined up like this and you don't see that diagonal line, you've got it wrong. And then we're going to stitch these two together on the top row and press them toward the light gray. We'll stitch these two and press toward the color. And then we'll do a special little trick when we press the 2 rows together. I've lined them up right beside my sewing machine, match my diagram. And I'm just going to start chain piecing these. Lay them right sides together. I like to stitch so I can see the half square triangles, just so I can try and avoid burying the points. Here's my top row. I press toward the light gray. Now we have Unit B, and we press toward the colored fabric. You can see how simple all these patches are. They're just half square triangles pieced together with a nice plain little 5x5 patch. And the magic all happens in how you rotate the blocks together. We stitch the top and bottom together. And I'm just going to take a minute and make sure I like the way these go together. We're going to do a technique that's called spin the seam. And the reason I want to do it is, first of all, it will reduce the amount of bulk all piled up in one spot here, right in the center. And the other thing is I want the seams pressed in opposite direction so that these are going to lock together nice when I place them all together on the top. Pull it, just hold it that way, hold the other one this way. You may have to just loosen up some of those stitches. I like to push that little triangle from the edge of the half square triangle flat. And then I can press the seam the way I want it, and the other one in the opposite direction. You can press it from the back side too if you want. There we go. Now we're ready to assemble the hunter star motif. The B units all go in the center, and the colored squares rotate one position to the right as we move around the motif. Once these are arranged correctly, you'll see a pinwheel form in the center. Just like before, I stitch the top row together and then the bottom row. I press the top row seams to the left and the bottom row seams to the right. That way, when we spin the seams later, they'll all open the same way across the quilt. The left side will naturally press down and the right side will naturally press up. I've pinned each seam so they stay aligned, and you'll notice that all of the seams nest nicely. Then I just stitch the two rows together. First, I like to press the seam to set the stitches, then open the center, split the seams, and press them in alternate directions. The left side presses down and the right side presses up. Now, as we place these motifs side by side across the quilt top, those seams lock together nice. That completes the hunter star motif. I finished all of my hunter star blocks and I've just placed them randomly up on my design wall. The top row is all stitched together, and this is the motif that I just stitched. These ones are all just placed on the design wall, and I'm just going to make a few adjustments. They randomly turned out pretty good. I like to keep the colors not too close together. I see that I've got two of the same color right here, and I want to change that out. And also I want one of my purples more in the center because that's more saturated and it's going to pop. And I have a few already spaced around the quilt. So I'm going to swap these two. And I'll just place, it goes like that. This is the B unit, so they're all together. And then this one, I'll put back here. Okay, I like the center better now, but I see now I have two green together. So the only other swap I'm going to make is I'm going to place this one here. And this one here. That way. All right, I'm really happy with that now. I'm just going to take each group of four, one at a time, to the sewing machine. I think I'll probably label the top left hunter star block so I know where they are placed when I bring them back, or when I'm at the sewing machine I'll know which position they belong. All right, let's put this quilt together and then we'll be ready for borders. Let's get going on the flying geese border. Now you may have seen this technique before. It's lots of fun and it's really fast. You don't waste any fabric, and the flying geese will be perfect shape and size every time. I'm using a Creative Grids Ultimate Flying Geese ruler. This is not necessary. You can size these up with a regular ruler. Each unit is going to create 4 flying geese. Now cut the squares, which are 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches. For each one of these, we need 4 of the light gray patches at 3 inches by 3 inches. These are just slightly oversized, and we're going to trim these after we get them stitched and cut. So this is a sew, cut, trim technique. The finished size of these flying geese are 2 inches by 4 inches. That's after you get them stitched in. So it's 2.5 by 4.5 with the seam allowance. Place your square right side up, and then we take 2 of these patches, place them right sides together. So this is the wrong side. And this one goes on this corner, and the other one goes on this corner. First of all, I'm going to draw the diagonal. This first line, and again, I'm using my sharp mechanical pencil. You can also use an air erasable or a water erasable fabric marker. Just remember, if you're using air erasable, your time is limited. I'm going to draw the stitching lines as well, just to make sure I'm totally accurate. But if you have a 1/4 inch foot and you've practiced these a while, you can just stitch from the lines. And I'm going to put a little pin in this just to hold it all together so it doesn't shift. Now I'm taking this to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch on each side. After I get my line stitched, I like to give it a little press just to set the stitches. Now I take my ruler, and this center line is the cutting line. So cut down the middle, and that gives us 2 sections. I'm going to take it to the iron and press these open. That gives me 2 sections, and the next step is take another light gray square and place it in this corner, and that's on both of them. Draw a line, do that on both of them, and then I'm going to stitch these 2 lines. Once you have both sides stitched, cut it apart like you did the other, and then just press open, and that gives us 4 flying geese. Now the last step is to trim these so that they're exactly 2.5 by 4.5 inches. Start with this side. It says trim number 1. The 2x4 is the D template. Line it up so that D triangle matches your seams. Trim the edge. You want to make sure you've got 1/4 inch here. Now turn it around and turn the ruler around. On the other side it says trim number 2. And then you find the 2x4 inch lines. And again, you'll see that lines up with your seams. Trim that side and trim the bottom. I just want to make sure that's 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches. I tried skipping this trim step, but it didn't work out well for me. With so many seams on the flying geese border, you need these to stitch out afterwards to exactly 2 inches, or your border is going to be too wide for the quilt center. So it's important to get these sized right. And then we just trim them all. Once you get your flying geese all trimmed up, lay them out so they're nice and scrappy. I like to alternate like a cool and a warm. Try and separate the same fabrics, but don't overthink it. Just lay it out so that it's a nice, looks really good and scrappy. Then you just lay them together, stitch along here, 1/4 inch, and press toward the wide end of the triangle. Here's one border that I have all completed. As you're stitching them, take your ruler and make sure you've got 2 inches on each one. Even a small variation of 1/16 of an inch can make a big difference over a wide border, and you need it to be the right width for it to match up to the inside of the quilt. This way is going to be 4.5, so 1/4 inch seam on each side, and there's 14 geese pointing this way and 14 geese pointing that way on all 4 sides of the quilt. There is one more patch. This is the cornerstones for the flying geese border. It's just a square and a square. So we just cut the inside colored patch 4 triangles, stitch 1/4 inch on either side here, press open, and then do the same on the other 2 sides. So that's really straightforward. Then once you get these all stitched, you need to trim them down so that they're 4.5 inches square. The first border is a simple 1.5 inch unfinished light gray strip. Next, I add the flying geese border. The square and square blocks become the cornerstones and tie the border sections together. With the final border attached, the Terra Nova quilt top is complete. I hope you've enjoyed seeing this quilt come together as much as I've enjoyed making it. I think Terra Nova offers a beautiful blend of earthy colors and timeless hunter star charm, and I hope it's inspired you to dig into your own stash. If you'd like to make Terra Nova, you'll find a link to the pattern in the description below. I'm Valerie Dawn, and I'll see you in my next video.